Hey, we're back.
Hi,
It's Riding Side Saddle, episode 5.
it's Lisa.
And Tammy.
We're here.
We are.
We're sitting.
We're back.
We're sitting outside of
Brazen Head.
Yeah, the planning headquarters.
That's right. In our recording studio, also known as Lisa's car.
Grand Cherokee. Diagonally parked because I can't park any other way.
So today, before we start on episode 5, we again just wanted to say thank you. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you for sharing your stories with us. Thank you for your comments on Facebook and for stopping us in our real lives to say, hey, I've been listening and I really love it. Or, hey, I haven't had a quiet moment to listen, but I will.
Right. Or even giving us new opportunities to be able to talk about things that are popping up for you. With some of the posts that we're sharing, some people are saying, hey, yeah, this, for sure this, and this too.
Right.
Like that means that we're connecting, and it means it's making a difference for folks.
Right. And that was the whole point. We wanted to connect with people. We talk about these things all the time. We say this every time, but we know that you're talking about it too. So let's talk about it together. Like our Facebook page, our YouTube channel. We're on Spotify and a whole bunch of other places. Share and
Please share.
and comment. We love the comments. So keep it coming.
Yeah.
I cannot tell you how much fun this is for us. And I hope that comes through, and I hope that you're having fun right along with us.
It's the bright spot of my life in this moment.
Oh,
honestly.
absolutely. For sure.
It's filling my well.
Well, you don't say. Is it really? Oh, that happens to be episode 5.
Really?
Where's the well?
How ironic.
Weird.
You're welcome.
So this is a topic. It really is about self-care. That's at the heart of it. But what does that look like? What does it look like for me today? What does it look like for me tomorrow? Or 5 minutes from now? What does it look like for you? Everyone has a different well. And sometimes it's hard to find that well. Mm-hmm. You know it's empty. You know it's bone dry.
But
you don't even...
It's buried underneath rocks.
Right.
And like...
big old boulders.
Yeah, like a mountain has grown over the top of it, and dragons are around it. And it's electrified, like an electric fence is around that well.
Sometimes it's real hard to find.
Yeah.
Yeah. And because everyone's situation is different, we don't have all the answers, but we just wanted to talk about it because it's something that's so important. This is more than just, getting a pedicure and a massage that, because someone gives you a gift certificate for Christmas. It's so much more than that. This is not something you can do once or twice a year. But if you don't even know where your well is and then you don't know what fills it, man, you're in big trouble.
I think one of the things that we've been talking about a lot, and one of our core values really when we started this was to be able to add different perspective. And, I only have my own experience, and Tammy only has her own experience, right? So sitting in our recording studio and talking about, just things from our vantage point, we absolutely know that our experience is not other people's experience. And, but an important thing is to be able to create the opportunity to ask questions so that people connect from their own place. Mm-hmm. And I think, where is my well, is a really good question that you can ask no matter where you are and what your situation is, right? It doesn't have to be privileged or, you can find your well because you're in that situation. It's important to be able to ask yourself some really complicated sometimes and hard questions, no matter the situation, mm-hmm. because you have to find the well no matter where you are.
I totally agree. I think it's actually kind of tied to intuition a little bit. So oftentimes we think of intuition as you're getting a message about some outside person factor or event or whatever, but it's also about yourself, right? That little voice that tells you what you need in this moment. And sometimes we don't really know what that is. We can't hear our intuition, so we also can't find our well, because they're very closely tied. I'm thinking about, so for myself, I've not been very good about filling my well.
Yeah.
I didn't even know I had a well.
Right.
Honestly.
Right.
I just knew
Wasn't
I was
even
running
on the property.
I didn't even know I was looking for a well. So when I found it, I was like, whoa, what is this?
What are those water fork things called where you find
like
water?
a tuning fork?
Yeah. I didn't even know I had one.
No, I didn't either, but we all have one. And I think it's, I didn't listen to myself, so I didn't know what I needed when I get really empty. And honestly, this is something that I am learning. The older I get, the more in tune to these sorts of things I'm getting. And I'm just starting to realize now that this is not something that I need to fill my well once or twice a year. This isn't something that, once every, 4, 5, 6 months you have dinner with a girlfriend and now your well is full and it's good for another 6 months. It's not. We dip into that well every single day. So when Lisa's daughter got married, I know I've had a connection with flowers. I love flowers.
This is one of my favorite memories and stories of Tammy ever.
It's one of my favorites too. In fact, that day my husband and I took a picture at Deidre's wedding, and it's my screensaver on my phone because it reminds me of really one of my very happiest memories. So Lisa's daughter is getting married, and I offered to come a little early to help set things up and do all those last minute things. And Lisa tasked me with going in the garden to pick some flowers to put on tables and make some flower arrangements and things.
Yeah, so we had the wedding at our house, and Deidre had wanted a cutting garden, right? It was in our yard, and she wanted a flower garden in outside and prepped for the wedding. So that's what we did.
Right.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, that's okay. So I am 3 or 4 rows deep in sunflowers and zinnias and all
Couldn't
sorts
even
of.
see her.
Right? But I was in there. I was finding the best flowers for all of the tables. And Lisa called me and she, Tammy, where are you? Where are you? And I pop out of the sunflowers.
Literally.
I pop out. I've got my basket on my arm full of flowers, and I pop out. I'm a little sweaty because it was summer, and my heart was so full. That was my first clue. That's what I need to fill my well.
And you could absolutely see every bit of that on the expression on your face. Like it was, I took a snapshot in my mind of you in that moment, because seeing you as full as you were in that moment, aside from the fact that my kid was getting married like in 2 hours, and all of the things on my list, and I haven't even gotten myself ready, and working on all of these things and going through all of the emotional components of getting ready to see your daughter get married. When I saw your face in that moment, like time stopped, because I could feel how full you were.
I was.
And then she hugged me all sweaty.
You're welcome.
And then I snapped back to reality. I'm like, girlfriend,
I have to get ready. And you need to cool off.
Get your sweaty pits off me.
Wasn't that bad.
I'm just teasing. Kind of.
But until you said that, when I saw your reaction to my popping out of the sunflowers, I didn't even realize that that's what was happening to me. And this is just a few years ago.
Yeah.
It's not like this happened 20 years ago.
Right, 3 years ago.
Right. So I'm close to 50 at that point, and I am just figuring out. Again, I've always felt an attraction to flowers. I love flowers. They're beautiful. I know they bring me joy. I didn't know how much joy they bring me. So that happened, and that was my first clue, like, oh, this is a big deal. I felt all of it, but you brought it to my attention. Once you said that to me, like, Tammy, your face is like, I've never seen you more beautiful. And I was a mess. I mean, I'm sweaty. I'm literally rose deep in the sunflowers. My hair's everywhere. Like, I was not like, wedding ready.
No, elbow deep, like sweating profusely.
Right.
Like a little sweaty means sweating profusely. But I will never ever forget that moment for you. It was you were in your best place.
I was in my best place, but I didn't know that until somebody said that to me. I am learning as we are doing these episodes that I have zero self-awareness, which is a problem. I can joke about it, but I really don't.
But
I don't
serious.
look at myself as closely as I need to, and so it's all part of my personal growth journey,
right.
honestly.
For all of us. And frankly, how many of us do actually have self-awareness? Like, for me personally, I have been, one of my defense mechanisms for myself is to stay very, very busy.
Oh, that's a trauma response.
Yeah, it is. It absolutely is. But for, the sake of understanding kind of, the environment that I personally myself am dealing with, is that I don't know myself very well either. And it's because I fill all of my time with a lot of busyness. And it's really easy to do in life, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like, I've been a single mother pretty much my whole life. Up until like 8 years ago, and raised 2 children and had a full-time job, and dealt with everything that that life comes at you. So it's really easy. It's really easy to fill up your time with a lot of busy, because the more busy you are, the more busy life will give you.
Well, and the less you have to look inside.
That's it.
Right?
That's it.
It's also really socially acceptable to be very busy. We think we get all these badges of honor for being the busiest, and you don't.
And not only socially acceptable, but expected.
Oh, for sure.
Like, the more busy you are equals the more successful you are in life. But
Well-
all of that busyness, like creates this skin, this thick skin, so that you don't you're too busy to even look beneath the surface.
Yeah.
And it takes a lot. It
Yeah.
takes a whole lot
We
to
hide
stop.
behind it. That is true. We hide behind our work ethic. Because again, that's socially acceptable and expected, right? You need to have a good work ethic to be a good person. And while that may be true, that doesn't mean that every minute of your day needs to be geared towards some sort of work.
Right.
Whether it's at your job or your home or your family or whatever it is.
Right.
You do have to have quiet time. And
that's really scary. Like, for me personally, to be forced into a corner where I had quiet time was a very, very scary place for a very, very long time. I would deliberately create situations where if I knew I had some space and time coming up, I'd fill it fast.
yikes. So there's no downtime. There's no time to rest. No wonder we can't find the well.
Yeah. Yeah. And, to your point, right? No matter how the situation goes, what excuse you have, so many of us have not really created a space for self-awareness.
For sure. And I think that what happens then is your well gets so completely dry. I mean, bone dry would be better than where it gets to, right? It is... So it gets so dry that when somebody even gives you a gift certificate, maybe somebody in your life can see that, whoa, this girl, she needs some time for herself.
She's tough. She is rough.
She needs her feet done. She needs a massage. Her fingernails look like they've been through the shredder. Her hair looks like no one's ever touched it.
She's been digging for the well.
Yes.
Making one herself.
Right. And someone in your life who loves you says, ooh, this girl needs a spa day for real.
Right.
And gives you a gift certificate. Now it's for me, when I get to that point, because this has happened, where somebody gave me a gift certificate to a spa, I never used it, and it expired because it was too hard for me to find the time to make an appointment.
Yeah.
Not just make the appointment, but to decide what kind of appointment I wanted. Was it going to be more than my gift certificate? Do I have the money to cover that? What else might I want in there? How am I going to get the time off of work? And if it's not at work, who's going to take care of my kids while I'm doing it? Now I've got the guilt because I should be home with my kids and not taking care of myself. All of that happens, and then I'm just paralyzed and I never make the appointment, and now the gift certificate expires.
Right.
It's too much.
Right.
So how do we find that well? Problem number one. Number two, how do you get everyday moments to fill it without taking time away from work, time away from your kids, all of the things that make you feel guilty? How do we get there? Well, there has to be something you can do. I was thinking about this recently. My husband loves to cook. I've mentioned this before. That is his happy place. He does not have to cook every single day. That's not realistic. And then it wouldn't be fun for him either. He works a full-time job. He commutes an hour each way. So it's not like he's at home, planning meals all day. But the 3 or 4 times a week that he does do it, it fills him up.
I get that. Tammy's husband and I have a lot of similarities.
That's true.
Actually, which is a little scary and weird, kind of, but it's true. And I too find my well in cooking, where it does fill me up. I love to be able to express myself in that way creatively. I love the level of appreciation that comes from that, from my family. Like, wow, this is fantastic.
Great dinner tonight, Mom.
Yeah,
Thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah, Josh loves that too. I don't. That depletes my well. That is not something that I don't love it.
Well, and don't get me wrong, like cooking and going through all of that effort, which, starts way before the actual stove turns on, right? You have to figure it out, and then you have to shop for it, and then you have to, prepare it and cook it and clean up after it and all of those things. So there's components to that, are exhausting. But filling your well, there are pieces to that despite the fact that there's true effort and work associated with it, I think sometimes that's the difference. To be able to say, this is a valuable use of my energy and time. I get something out of the energy that I put out. Do you know what I mean?
I do know what you mean.
It's like a return.
I do know what you mean. That doesn't happen for me in the kitchen.
Yeah, but it happens for you in different ways.
Yeah, for sure it does. So the wedding, the flowers, the sunflower in the garden thing, that was my first realization that was something that not only did it fill my well, but it centered me. So fast forward a few years to my youngest daughter's baby shower, and my ex-husband and I were both going to be there, which is a stressful,
It's a trigger for you.
It is. But just anticipating
what it might be.
Right. And mostly we get along by we just avoid each other, right? So I wasn't expecting there to be a confrontation, but not only is there the emotion of this is my baby's baby shower, but there are going to be people there that I don't normally see.
Right.
And now I have to be careful, and, there's some eggshells involved and things like that. And I want to have a good time and I want to enjoy it, so I'm trying to balance that. And I woke up that morning in a really, really crummy place. And I recognized that I was doing this to myself. I didn't sleep well the night before. There was a lot of things running through my head.
Of course.
And so at some point, my husband wanted to get going. We were going to go to my daughter's house early, and he wanted to go even earlier than I wanted to go because he's always early and I'm always late. So there's always this little tug of war, and I wasn't ready because I wasn't centered. I had been to the grocery store to pick up. I was making some fruit salad and things like that, and I specifically waited to go to the store that morning because I knew I was going to need some time to myself. My house was full and it was busy, and so I wasn't going to get that time alone. So I thought, well, I'll just go. I'll have 20 minutes to myself to help me center myself. I got home and it didn't work. That is not where I find my well. It's not at the grocery store.
Right.
I don't like to cook. I don't like to grocery shop. I don't know why I thought that would fill my well. It did not.
And maybe it was just a matter of, I'm going to be by myself for a little while.
It was.
Yeah.
Which is important to me too. I'm an introvert. I do need that. I didn't need to pull all of the energy from everyone in my house, which I was already doing. And I had too much of my own energy.
Yeah.
But it didn't work. It helped a little, but I was nowhere near ready to get in the car and go to this party.
Yeah, you weren't centered at all.
Right. So at some point, I realized that what I needed to do was go in my garden and pick some flowers. My daughter didn't want flowers on the tables. I needed flowers on the table. So I texted her and I said, can I please bring some flowers? My daughter is very... she doesn't like a lot of attention. She wanted it to be more of a party, less of a baby shower. She just wanted it to be her favorite people and a lot of fun and food and, a
Coming
bonfire
together.
and just a party, right?
Yeah.
Not a big
To-do
thing. But I really needed to bring those flowers. So I texted her and I said, can I please bring some flowers to put on the tables? I promise I won't go overboard. I promise it won't be a big deal, but I really do need this today. And she said, yep, sure, whatever you need to do, that's fine. So I had already worked that out. That's how I was going to center myself because I remembered at Deidre's wedding how that made me feel. So my husband says, come on, we got to get going. And I said, I'm not ready to go yet. I need to go pick some flowers. And he said, just go tell Sarah to do it. She'll do it. And I was feeling myself starting to bubble over. I took a deep breath and I said, Josh, I really need that. It centers me. Please don't take that from me. I really need this today. And he totally backed off. I went in the garden. It was maybe 20 minutes. I don't have a big garden. I don't have rows and rows of sunflowers like you do. I've got some hydrangeas and some sage and lavender and just little,
Absolutely enough.
cone flowers, but it was enough.
It was so beautiful, too.
Thank you. And it centered me. And after that, I remember at that shower, our aunt was there and I was relaying this conversation. And she said, I think it's so great that you girls know how to tell people what you need, which led into a whole different conversation, which will be an episode on another day. Yeah. But I didn't realize that that's what I had done. I told my husband what I needed and he respected that. That filled my well.
Yeah.
And then I went out in the garden. That filled my well.
Right.
It's finding those little moments, but until you know what those moments are, how do you know where your well is, much less what fills it? Maybe it's having a cup of coffee in the morning before the whole house gets up.
Right.
You get the place to yourself for, 10 or 20 minutes.
Well, and I think that it can change based on the moment, right? Like, to your point, if you've already packed yourself so full,
Right.
that you can't figure out how
you're
to
just
get
spinning.
out of the expectations, maybe it is just a cup of coffee, or maybe it's like walking outside and like sitting for 5 minutes. Maybe you're in a place of overwhelm, because that's where I often find myself. Like, there are too many things that I have happening and I can't control, and I just need to go like in the shower and like break down for a while, so that nobody can see tears coming out of my eyes because it's all wet.
That's where
like
you
my
are.
face is wet. And that might be self-care for me at that moment.
Crying is like taking a shower on the inside.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
important to do that too.
Yeah.
It's important to make space for that when that's what you need.
So, my life has been ridiculously insane. Not because of things that I've put into my life, but just because that's what happens in life sometimes. And, that becomes very overwhelming to the point where my husband went with me in a very traumatic situation. And I jumped out of the car because I forgot something. And as I was getting out of the car, I screamed at the top of my lungs, like almost sounding insane. But in that moment, because I was holding it together for an extended period of time so that other people could like figure out how to move forward, I needed to release that right at that moment. And I like screamed like a crazy woman, loud, and probably with some profanity, but I won't like...
You don't have to reenact.
Right,
That's all right.
But that filled my well at that moment. And not because I was filling up, but because I had so much in me at that time that I just needed to let some of it go. And there was no
other way to do
that. And then I got in the car and we left. He said absolutely nothing.
Because he's a smart man.
And he knew what I needed, right?
Yeah.
Like he knew the level of pressure that was building up for me at that time. And that's what I needed to be able to release some of it. And be like, okay, I can get back in again. I can get back in the game.
Right. I just needed a timeout.
Yeah.
You take your 30 seconds.
To freak out for a moment.
Yep. Right.
Nobody talk about it ever again.
That did not just happen.
We will never speak about this again.
Until we're on a podcast, and then I'll tell everybody.
I can tell people, but you cannot.
Right.
So I think, honestly, it, when I think about different people and different situations, not everybody is going to be able to, cook their way into a full well. Not everybody's going to be able to pop their cute, sweaty little head out of a flower garden and feel like their well is full.
Right.
I think really what the core of this is, what the root is, we can come up with 1,000 different examples. Go get a pedicure. Have a cup of coffee, before the rest of the house wakes up. Scream, fuck, if you have to, right? But the point is that at some point you need to put a stop, like stop the process. And I'm envisioning like just a wedge in the gear to be able to say, hold the fuck up for a second, because my well's empty. And I can't do shit with an empty well. So sticking the wedge in the cog and being able to say, I don't know where my well is.
But I need something to fill it.
I don't know what to do to fill it, but I need to take a fucking minute and figure it out. I need to do that for me, and I do need to do that for all the rest of you who are looking for me for cups of water from my goddamn well, because I got nothing. And I think that's the pivotal piece. I don't care what fills your well.
It might be an exercise class. It might be a walk in nature. It could be, I don't know. I don't know.
Picking between your toes. Right. I mean, probably not, but
maybe just having a shower without somebody knocking on the bathroom door.
Right. Picking at your toes was probably a bad example.
That's probably a little too gross.
Whatever. But the point is,
finding something.
Just stop.
Yeah.
Stop and
Stop
take the moment.
overscheduling.
Take the moment. For me personally, I write a lot. I journal a ton. I have books and books and years of journaling.
Wow.
Because like 20 minutes in the morning when I'm by myself, maybe 3 or 4 times a week, it helps me. It helps me a lot to be able to write down my thoughts in a way that I don't have to change the way I communicate the words. It can be raw. It can be ugly and horrible, or it can be the most blessed, grateful feeling that I've ever had in my whole entire life. It can be immature or despicable. And by getting them out, like getting out what's happening in that point in time, I can process. It helps me process things. So maybe journaling is,
Maybe.
I mean, for me, it has saved me through a lot of things.
That's pretty awesome. You've also mentioned how yoga is something that you get a real relief from, not just physically, but when your life has gotten really busy lately, you realize that you had cut out yoga to try to make more time.
Right.
To simplify your life a little bit. You took something off your plate, and then you came to realize after a couple of weeks of that, oh man, I'm really missing that. That actually was keeping me together. I need to put that back on my plate because my plate is more full when it's not on my plate.
It's really interesting, and thank you for bringing that up. I started really focusing in on yoga about a year ago, and it was, it started out to be able to support my daughter, who is yoga instructor and all of those things. So I'm like, yeah, for sure. I need some physical activity, and I'll do this. And then it was gearing more towards the physical activity. And I'm like, oh, I'm starting to feel changes in my body and see some changes in my body. And I didn't necessarily realize the mental and emotional impact of it until, like you said, I got really overwhelmed. I, shut that off completely for about 2 weeks. And I'm like, this feels terrible. And getting back into it has helped a lot. And it's...
You didn't even know that was filling your well.
I didn't.
Until it was missing.
Right. And the one thing about yoga that I have learned, because, regardless, I have learned that you hold a ton of emotion energetically in your hip space. So when in yoga, you move through particular poses that are associated with your hips. If you're holding emotion, it just starts coming out. Like what would you imagine the pigeon pose to make you start bawling like a baby? But it absolutely does.
Wow.
And it really tells you how much, how much you hold, and you don't even know it until all of a sudden you're physically and energetically releasing that.
Again, crying is like taking a shower on the inside.
Yeah, there's a ton
it's
there.
Necessary.
Yoga is absolutely
it's a lifesaver for you.
Yeah, fill your well for sure, and empty it if you're in pigeon pose. I think, one of the other things that I guess I wanted to chat about was, self-care, clearly important. But one of the things that have come up recently is around what's the difference between self-indulgence and self-care?
I think I get stuck in self-indulgence when really what I need is self-care. I'm going to lay on the couch and watch Netflix all day because I just need some downtime, when really what I need is some self-care time.
Right.
So I think I'm doing myself a whole world of good by taking a whole day to just lay around and do nothing and rest. That's how I feel, that I just need some rest. And maybe I do need some of that. But if I took some of that day and did something that nourishes me as opposed to just resting and binging on Netflix, it would do me more good. And I know this.
Yeah.
But I don't but it feels like too much of an effort
Right.
to break out my watercolor paints, or I have a pottery studio in my basement that I almost never use. Go down there and just play with clay for a while. If it's summer, I could be in the garden. Even pulling weeds is nourishing, honestly.
Right.
But I don't. I'd rather just lay on the couch because I'm at that point where my well is so dry that now any of those things that I know nourishes me is too much.
It's too much for you. So where's that, number one, where's that pivot point, right? Where's the balance?
Right.
To be able to make sure you don't get to that place.
Right.
But then secondly, perhaps being able to reflect and identify and, determine, is this rest and binging out on Netflix, is it actually, like, how do I feel after that? Do I feel just as exhausted or more apathetic afterwards? Because that's not filling my well.
Right.
Right? That's being, perhaps, I don't know if self-indulgence is the right word, but
it feels like it. Like, to give myself a whole day to do nothing, it feels very self-indulgent.
which I suppose if it filled you well and you felt better afterwards, then that might be a well filler, right? There's nothing to say that that's the wrong approach, but to be able to evaluate and reflect, to say, so this is what I chose to do. How am I feeling afterwards? Am I feeling more full? Am I feeling better?
No, I'm lying to myself.
Right.
Honestly.
Right.
And I'm also letting myself get to a place where I'm so empty that doing anything other than laying on the couch feels like too much
exhausting.
effort.
Yeah.
So finding a spot before I need to be on the couch is key.
I get
really.
that.
Which is weird. So now I'm going to go back to realizing that my husband fills his well in little bits of time by cooking. Yeah. That is how he fills his well. And I'm not finding those little bits of things that fill my well. So I need to take another look at myself. I live in Wisconsin. We don't have gardens year round.
Right.
But I do have other things that fill my well. I need to stop and find those things before I get to a point where I need to be on the couch lying to myself about how I'm taking care of myself. Really.
I agree. And on the opposite side, like, I need to stop filling my damn schedule so packed full that I easily say, well, I don't have time. I have all of these things to do, so that I can't spend any time figuring out where my well is and or how to fill it.
You can't even feel that it's empty because you're so busy.
And then I get pissed off because I'm too busy, and I get angry about it.
Screaming outside because you need a release.
Right.
Any release.
Right. Eeks.
Well, once again, digging below the surface.
Did we ever say we had the answers for these things?
Yes, Lisa.
Because we don't.
No, we don't.
We're as fucked up as anybody else.
Oh, man.
But again, I think the point of it is that if we deal and struggle through these, and this is part of everyday life for us, it's part of everyday
for everybody
life.
too.
Like, you can take a connection here and apply it to your own life. Not that we're going to tell you, here's the magic cure, because we don't have it.
No.
There isn't a magic cure. It's oftentimes like really just doing the deep work, right? Where is your well? And what are you putting in that thing?
How do you fill it?
Right?
And how often do you fill it? And if you're not filling it, why?
And guess what? That fucking changes.
It does change.
Your well moves. And
What?
yeah, it does. And what you fill it changes.
Well, what the hell? No wonder it's so tricky.
It's a magic well. It does what it wants.
Apparently.
Mine does. All right.
Well, we don't have any answers. That's not the point of this. We're just talking about it and planting seeds, both for ourselves and hopefully for all of you listeners. It is, you have to find your well and you have to fill it. Like, that's not really negotiable.
No, it's not. And ultimately, you have to spend the time. because you can't keep going with a dry well.
You can't run. You can run, but you can't hide.
That's right. You might fall down the well.
You might. Apparently,
empty.
because it moves, you might trip into it.
Well, it's empty, so it's
That'll
going to
hurt.
hurt at the bottom. Okay, this is Riding Side Saddle. Bye.
Bye.